everyone. Welcome to our second VC Q&A with Maulik Mehta. He is a seasoned senior associate at ARC Ventures, an early stage venture fund based in New York. With nearly 5 years of experience in venture capital, Maulik has played a pivotal role in shaping ARC Ventures' investment strategy and portfolio management. He has spearheaded numerous initiatives, including sourcing and analyzing startups, conducting due diligence, and providing strategic support to portfolio companies. Maulik's extensive background also includes roles at notable organizations such as Alchemist Accelerator, Tata Communications, and Mumbai Angels Network, where he honed his skills in investment analysis, portfolio development, and impact investing. With a passion for supporting innovative startups and driving positive change, Maulik brings knowledge and expertise. Now, this is going to be a two-part interview because like me, Maulik was also an international student. And as you all know, like breaking into VC is very difficult. And especially as an international student, it's very, very difficult. So we thought let's do a two-part interview where in the first part, we'll be talking about how to break into VC. And in the second part, we will discuss about ARC Ventures' early stage investment strategy. So let's get started. Maulik, over to you. What unique experiences or skills helped you stand out when entering the venture capital industry?
Swamini, thanks so much for having me on the pod. I truly appreciate it. And I think what you're doing with your own pod, creating a brand for yourself, that's probably what you need to get into any type of roles, but especially venture. But yeah, to your question, I think all you need is probably to create relationships with people working at venture funds because that's an easy way in to at least get an interview. So I would probably say you need to hustle and get coffee chats with people, try to learn more about their investment thesis, portfolio construction, like what type of companies they invest, what sectors do they look for. And I think if you do all of the work without asking, I think you can probably get an interview for a role. So I would suggest the following. I would say, do all of the work which an associate analyst or an intern does without them asking, and then probably get their feedback. So generally an intern, analyst, associate will probably deal with, deal sourcing and due diligence, which are like the bread and butter of like a VC or like a venture job. And I think if you have a conversation with someone on the team, you'll probably know a lot more about what sectors are they trying to invest into and what stage. So probably try to like source deals for them and then reach out to the founder. And you can always be like, hey, I'm a venture scout for like Fordham Angel Fund, which you are, and then I'm looking at this space. I would love to have a conversation with you to learn more about the business. And then you can also be like, I am also speaking with like a bunch of VC funds. If you need intros to like any venture funds while you are fundraising, I'm happy to help you out. And you need to like get the double opt-in from like the founder as well as from like the VC. So you can probably send over like a blurb and like a deck to the VC fund, and then if they like the business, they'll probably ask an intro, and then you probably merged or like introduced two people. So at that time you already did some of the work which an analyst would do where you introduce someone, and then I think then you can probably ask both of the VC and the founder to spend more time with you, try to create a relationship because you already did some part of work for them. You introduce them, and then you can eventually down the line when they have like an opening, you can ask them for a favor. So I would suggest like developing a relationship with people at venture funds, and then also acting as like a venture scout, trying to like source deals and then diligence them depending upon their investment thesis. Those are like a couple of like qualities I would probably do while venturing out for like a venture role.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, could you share some strategies or tactics you use to break into venture capital, especially during your early career stages?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and everyone would have like a different answer. I can only speak about myself, but generally what I did was I moved to the US 2018, but I had some amount of venture experience. So I worked for an angel investing network called Mumbai Angels for a bit, and then I moved to the US essentially to break into venture. So I think it was 2018, and I was still trying to like cold email people asking them for coffee chats, but that was not super useful because generally I was asking them for their time, which is very valuable, and then you're not bringing anything to the table. So what I did was I started the venture capital and private equity club at Fordham University with two of my best friends, and then we would cold email people and set up panel panel events, because generally if people don't want to speak one-on-one during coffee chats, they would probably like to speak about themselves to like 50 people, 50 students. Most VCs love talking about themselves, which is why I'm here. And then I think most of them also want to help students, at least the ventures ecosystem in New York, where they want to help students at universities with like their technical expertise and how they broke in. So I would cold email people and then bring them to my panel events. And then once the panel event was done, I would probably jump on a coffee chat, like meet them for like 30, 45 minutes and essentially see what type of deals they invest into, and then probably start a relationship where I would source for them, I would due diligence, I would write up an investment memo. And over time, I think they would be comfortable in asking, oh, what do you think about this company? Would you mind drafting like a market size analysis for this company? So I would get closer to them. Another approach which I took, which some people might love, some people might not, would I would stand outside office buildings. So like all of the tier one or tier two funds, which are pretty big, like Insight Partners, Lead Edge Capital, I would stand outside their office buildings on, 2 days a week. And then during lunch hours, and every time someone would walk down, I would quickly take a look at like the team slide and then take a look at their backgrounds. I would already know about their investment thesis. I would already know about what portfolio companies they have invested, and then I would just introduce myself. So I would say, hi, I'm Maulik Mehta. I actually work for a venture fund in India, and I just moved here, and I want to break into venture. And I have read a lot about you, your company, what type of companies you invest into, portfolio companies. Would you have time to walk while you get to the lunch place? I would walk with them, and most people would say yes. So walk with them until when they get lunch, ask a couple of questions related to themselves, their background, and then once they are in at the lunch place, I think I would stand outside once they come back, and then I would be like, hey, I'm still here. Would you mind continuing the conversation back to your office? So I would wait outside the lunch place for about 15 minutes until they got lunch and then walk back. And at some point of time, they were like, this kid seems to be intellectual or like bright enough to like work in venture. And I think at that moment, I would get like their email IDs, and then I would probably try to build up a conversation with them to get like one-on-one time next week or the week after. So I would do that multiple times in a week, and I would target to speak to 7 people every week, 7 to 10 people, and then just try to build up a relationship.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That story, like, first, when you told me, I was so inspired and amazed with your grit. And that was also the time when I was like, oh, should I be looking into VC or not? But then I was like, if Maulik can do it, I should also just keep going. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, how important is it for aspiring professionals to gain experience through internships or similar roles in the VC space? And what value did you personally find in these experiences?
Yeah, so I generally only had investing roles. So I was an intern at Founders Embassy, I was an intern at Social Impact Circle, and then I was an intern at Entrepreneurs Roundtable Accelerator, which is an accelerator in New York. All of these only taught me like investing, sourcing due diligence, and some amount of like portfolio management, I would say, which at least gets you into like the whole startup ecosystem in the US. But I would also suggest, even if you get a role, like an operating role, like strategy, business development, or marketing, or finance at like a startup, that's still fine, because then you'll probably understand a lot more about what goes under the hood. So you'll probably be a sector expert or a company expert as compared to just say like investing. And I think you will probably have like a deep technical know-how about one sector. And then a lot of people will probably reach out to you and be like, hey, Swamini, I know you probably worked at RAM, for example. You must know a lot about like, fintech as a whole. Would you have like 15 minutes to spend time with me? And then you can probably make your way to a fintech focused venture fund where you can be like, hey, I'm a seasoned operator. I used to work at like a fintech company. And then are you thinking of probably hiring someone who has experience working at like a fintech company? So that is also helpful. And on the other end, if you have like investing experience, that's also very helpful, because then you are embedded in the ecosystem, and then you already know about like the usual tasks, which are sourcing due diligence. And then you can probably, depending upon the investment thesis of the fund, you can probably source really good deals for them, speak with the founders, and then try to diligence them, write up an investment memo for your partners to review, and then probably close an investment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, what are some common challenges you faced when breaking into VC and how did you overcome them?
I think the venture landscape or venture as an ecosystem is a very top heavy ecosystem. Top heavy, i.e., there are lot more partners than analysts. It's like the inverse of a bank. So I think in terms of like getting a role at venture, you have to like time your exit well, because generally not all venture funds are hiring at the same time. But if you go to a bank, most banks are hiring regardless of the timing, unless it's like a summer internship where they have like strict guidelines. But I think in venture, you have to, as I mentioned, like develop a relationship with people, and then you have to wait until someone either leaves that VC fund or someone, or when they raise a new fund, because once they raise a new fund, they have a lot more dry powder, they have a lot more management fee, and then they can probably need more hands and more voices on the table to source your investments, portfolio management. There are like so many roles in venture which we can dive deeper into. But generally, when they raise a new fund, they probably think about hiring because they have more dry powder. So I think the biggest challenge for me was making sure, even though I have a good relation with some of the funds in New York, I had to wait out to see when then they were hiring next. In some instances, they can probably hire, but in most instances, they have to like wait until someone leaves to replace them, or when they try to raise a new fund. So I think that was like the biggest challenge. And I think in order to go past that challenge, probably have like a relationship with them, keep them posted, have like quarterly conversations with the partners there, but do your own work. Probably join a startup, try to gain operational experience, and then once the opportunity arises, you'll be first in line.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, what advice would you offer to individuals from non-traditional backgrounds interested in pursuing a career in venture capital?
I think venture treats everyone as equal, and I don't think none of us has an advantage regardless of what background you come from. Because I've come across people who were like a teacher in their past life, or who were like a model, who were trying to like deploy capital as an angel. I think everyone wants different facets or like skill set from people. I think it depends a lot more on the fund, on what type of qualities do they want. And VC funds might also be like, we want someone who can only source deals for us, or some VC funds would be like, we have like a very good network, we are reliant on them for deal flow, but we only want someone who can write up investment memos for us. So I think the skill sets of both of these are very different. And someone would probably be like, we want someone on the platform side or like the portfolio management side. So I think understanding that is a bit more important when you are talking with someone at like the VC fund. But I think, having your own background is still fine. So I would probably say like leverage your own background, tell the partners more about the strengths which you have, because everyone comes with their own strengths and everyone has like different skill sets. So probably like leverage those skill sets. For instance, like you are building a very good brand for yourself. You are interviewing people. You are already doing a lot for them while getting them on the pod. So you have a very good relationship with them. And then you also have like some good startup operating background in the past. So you can probably leverage that and go to a VC fund and be like, hey, I have operating background. I'm trying to create a brand for myself. I'm getting investing experience through like the Fordham Angel Fund. So I think I have a mixture of like operating plus investing. And then I can work with like portfolio companies if you want, in terms of for a portfolio management role. I can also be helpful on an investment role where you want to look at due diligence or like sourcing. I can go to like events for you. I can underwrite the startup for you. So try to understand how you would be useful to the partner, how you can make them maximize their time, and just leverage that strength of you. And then probably most people will give us a chance.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I can totally resonate because as I was talking to different people throughout like the last 8 months, and they would share about themselves for like, like a 1 minute or 2 minute pitch. And then it's very interesting. So even if, for example, I heard someone saying that, oh, I did an engineering, but then I was not interested in a technical role. So I did this. And it's
Hmm.
just the way how people curate their story. So I think
Yeah.
owning where you come from, and obviously, if you are at a stage where you want to break into VC, there is obviously something that has motivated you. So just owning your story, focusing on your strength. Because someone also told me that, Swamini, I will believe the story that you tell me. If you say you don't know VC, then I'll believe that. If you say you know VC, I'll believe that. So it's just like how you portray yourself. I think that matters a lot.
That's a very good point, because you can only vouch for yourself. No one else is going to vouch for you. And then story writing is a very underrated quality, because if you have conversations with people and if you can make them like you while telling a story, I think that's more of an art than a science. But I think a lot more people will probably give you more chances if they already like you and if they want you to succeed.
I totally agree with that. Now, in your opinion, what essential qualities or skills do VC firms typically look for in candidates, and how can aspiring professionals develop or demonstrate these attributes?
I would say like underwriting the startup is probably the most important skill set, because they want to hear more about what you think. So I think at most VC they leverage your opinion and you have a voice on the table and you can probably say what you think about the startup. And I think most of the partners would at least listen. For instance, if you have an engineering background, you can probably tell us more about in terms of like a technical underwriting standpoint. You can probably underwrite the product much quicker than someone who has like investing or like finance experience. So probably leverage that quality. But I think if you have sector expertise and if you can underwrite the startup, those are probably the most important skill sets, apart from sourcing, which is still important. But if you can tell your partner, hey, this is a good startup for X, Y, and Z reasons, and same for not, you have a lot more time on your plate and you can probably get to a decision much quicker to, and you can always spend a lot more time on the startups which you like and probably communicate an answer to the startups which are not a great fit. So I think managing time while underwriting a startup is also very important, because as a VC associate, you have to juggle a lot. So you probably have like about 20 deals on your pipeline. You have to like keep everyone posted on your internal process. And then you have to do your own work in terms of underwriting the startup, underwriting the team, taking a look at the market size, taking a look at like differentiators. And once you are comfortable, you'll probably say, hey, I want to invest in the company. And then getting allocation is also a problem, but we can talk a bit more after that. But I think if you can say if the company is good in like under 3 meetings, then you are probably utilizing your time well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, can you discuss mentorship's role in your venture capital journey and how it might benefit others looking to enter the field?
From my personal experience, since I used to like cold email people, I would get them on my panel events and then probably treat everyone who were on my panels as a mentor, just because they have done a lot more for me, because they took time to be on a panel event and they also took time later to tell me more about any sort of like advice, feedback they had on the panel. Plus they gave me insights on how to break into venture, because they were like a seasoned professional and then they know a lot more than someone like me who just moved to this country. So I think mentorship is very helpful, because you can leverage their opinion. They have gone through it themselves, so they can probably help you at the same time while going through the same hurdles. So I think as an intern, analyst, associate, some of the hurdles you'll probably go through is like recruiting. They can probably tell you how the fund is, what type of companies do they invest into. They probably know a lot more about the partners, because venture is a very tight ecosystem, and they probably know a lot of people in the ecosystem, because you have to like be co-investors with them. Your deals might get like an up round from like a VC fund because they like you and they like the startup. So you have to maintain very close ties, and then you can probably leverage their opinion and ask about what do they think about this VC fund while you are interviewing. So, having good mentors is also very important, but they will also tell you the stuff which are doing right and stuff which you can improve on. So I think having like 2 or 3 mentors which you can speak openly about your own life is very important, but at the same time, you should also do a lot for them. So if they are partners at VC funds in terms of work, you can probably see who could be like good LPs for them, because they are always in like fundraising mode. They need money just to make sure that their fund operations run well. You can be like, hey, I can help you with like a couple of people who invest in like funds. Those would be like good to speak with. Same for sourcing deals, but I think if you can help them with like introductions to LPs, that's probably the biggest value add you can add.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, how do you recommend balancing the need for technical expertise with the ability to network and building relationships in the venture capital industry?
I think building up relationships is more on sourcing. Plus, once you like, let me speak to you about relationships. I think relationships are very important, because if you want to move to a different place, most of the VCs who you are friends with, they will probably back for you. So you can probably get an interview out of it. But regardless of interviewing, you also need to work with them on a co-investor point of view. Because if you are looking at a seed startup raising a $3 million round, and depending upon what ownership percentage you have, you probably need allocate 10% of the business. So you'll probably allocate, depending upon the valuation, probably allocate like 1 million or 1.5 million. The rest of the 1.5 million is still open. So you'll probably go through a trusted co-investor network and see who could be a good fit for you. But in order to go there and help the founders with an introduction to a VC fund which you value, you need to build up relationships or ties with them. So from a co-investor standpoint, I think you need that. And then also works on the other end, while if you are an associate at a different VC fund, I can just be like, hey Swamini, I love this company, this is why I love them, this is how I can work with them and provide value add. Is there any chance you can introduce the founders to me, where if they are looking for a fundraising round, regardless of the timeline, I can probably add value and hopefully get an allocation later down the line. So I think that's more on the deal sourcing side and helping you like fill out the round two. I think on the technical aspect, it's more on the due diligence part, because as you climb up the ladder, you have to source and due diligence at the same time, right? So in order to maximize your time, because you only have 24 hours in the day, I think getting to a no or having super conviction about a startup is also very important, because you want to spend time researching more about the startup which you like and which you have the highest conviction. Prioritizing time management is very important, because as I said, like if you have 20 companies, you have to make sure which 3 companies are worth your time. And hopefully the 3 companies which you pick is where you spend most amount of your time, and hopefully they are your next portfolio companies. But diligencing the other 17 and telling them why you don't think this is a good business model, or your concerns or your risk, is also very important, because you don't want to come across as someone who did not get a chance to research more about the company or diligence the company. So you have to make sure that you pass early and you have like highest conviction in the companies you invest into.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, are there any particular opportunities that you're looking at? Because VCs are always trying to go for the next big opportunity. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, generally every quarter we do our own analysis and we do like research reports where we spend time on one sector and then we diligence the sector, take a look at like the market size, take a look at the companies already in the vertical. So that probably gives us a good head start on asking some of the questions to the founder when you get an introduction. So I think we have developed a research report on like smaller clinics, because some of the smaller clinics actually go through like the working capital pain point, where you get, if you work at a smaller clinic, you need to get paid on a certain date, but generally they only get paid when the insurance kicks in. So like for instance, if I go to a smaller clinic, I need to go there, get my procedure done, and then my insurance will cover for me, but the insurance will probably only cover for me after 2 weeks, but they need to get paid on a certain day. So I think bridging the working capital gap is also very important, and I think that's a good market to target with like smaller clinics, because generally they want to make sure that they retain staff, and one way to retain staff is to pay them on time. And I think there are a couple of companies which we have looked at who are trying to solve that problem. And we are also looking at, like just talking about smaller clinics, we are also looking at companies that are trying to make sure like doctors become more productive. So doctors spend a lot of time on writing notes and not really on listening to the patient. And I think there are a lot of like Gen AI tools or like startups who are trying to help doctors spend more time on listening to the patients. So they help the smaller clinics eliminate all of the admin tasks which the doctors generally do, because they don't really have a lot of staff on the payroll. So they will probably help with like the pre-appointment. During the appointment, they will probably like transcribe notes from the meeting. They'll have like follow-ups, like action items. They will also have insurance where they can take a look at what would be the cost to pay for the patients. So I think there are a couple of startups who play into that vertical. We're still trying to build conviction, but those are like some of the skills or the sectors which we are looking at with Gen AI and how popular it is right now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, my last question for this particular segment is, looking back on your journey, what were the most important lessons or insights you gained while breaking into venture capital, and how might others benefit from similar experiences?
Like anyone trying to get into venture, it's a very rewarding journey. But I would also say don't get discouraged by the amount of no's you'll get, because just like a founder interviewing at like a VC fund, you'll probably hear a lot more no's than yeses. But you only need like one yes to get like an internship or like a role. So I would just say don't get discouraged and then keep hitting the wall until it breaks or you break. So I think if you do that, and if you show up to events, a lot more people will recognize you. If you try to help investors meet up with founders, a lot more people will recognize you. I would also help some of the VC investors write investment memos. So if they want my thoughts on like a couple of like market size or like differentiators or like what's like the scale of the business, I would also do like a lot more like free work for these guys so that I'm in like the good books. And then once there is an opportunity, you can always ask for like the favor back. And a lot more people would be like, this guy helped me in the past, and this is my time to help him back.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And just to add one more point to it, which I learned the hard way, was don't ask for directions to people who haven't been to the destination, where you want to go, because a lot of people I spoke to initially who were not in VC and they were like, oh, this is impossible. You won't be able to do it. And I wasted a lot of time talking to them. It was only when I started talking to people who are in VC, because they know, right, like how to get there. They have been on a journey. So I feel that talk to the people who are in a position to guide you and to help you get where you want to go, and don't get distracted talking to other people. So thank you so much for this. Now I would like to move on to the next round. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will find this useful.
I'm sure like it's helpful for people trying to break into venture, because I was also in your place while I was trying to break into venture. So I would listen to like, podcasts or like people trying to like break into venture from a country which they are not, and then try to build up their own network. Because a lot of times the only pushback I got is you're not embedded in the whole ecosystem in the US or in New York. And I think it's still a task which you can change. Like you can go to like more events, try to source more deals, as I mentioned. But if you are focused on trying to break into venture, it will happen at some point of time.
Thank you so much, Maulik, for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Swamini. Thanks so much for having me.